Look, let's widen the conversation to electoral reforms. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has signed the amended Electoral Act into law, despite protests and strong criticisms from opposition parties and civil society groups. At the heart of the controversy is the decision to make electronic transmission of election results optional rather than mandatory. Why do you think this particular provision has become such a flashpoint in Nigeria's democratic debate?
There is no such thing as making electronic transmission optional. That is a misreading of what happened. It is real-time transmission that is optional. The law guarantees electronic transmission. What it does not guarantee is real-time transmission. Why? Because of issues like connectivity issues, infrastructure issues. Across our country, you cannot say there is network everywhere. Even along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, there are places you get to where you won't be able to use your phone. Along the road, you are traveling. There are many communities where people live and they cannot use phones. I've given an example of Briningwari because work took me to the place. And I observed that in Briningwari, even if you want to pay for 10 lorry loads of cattle, you must pay cash. They cannot transfer money to anyone. POS will not work. I mean, these are things that people can verify on their own. All of the base stations in that area have been destroyed by bandits. So if base stations are not standing, there is no bank in Briningwari that is standing. All the banks have been burnt. Under the reign of terror that bandits unleashed on the people. In Borno State, you can count communities where people can use phones. And I said it on Journalist Hangout that the governor of Borno State and my friend, the speaker, whenever they are in Borno North, I'm unable to communicate with them. This is a fact. I'm on what is optional is real time because where you cannot transfer instantly, where you cannot transfer result instantly, a fallback option, which is the option. I mean, form EC8A is the form on which results are written. Now you can snap the results imputed on form EC8A and transmit where there is network. People will move to areas where the electoral officers will move to areas where they can transmit. The last election, the last general election, 2 weeks after the election, in fact, more than 2 weeks after the election, INEC was still uploading on iRev. If it was possible to upload results or transmit results real time, why would they still be uploading 2 weeks after? Because it's not in every part of the country that you can transmit results real time. But propagandists are making it look like they said don't transmit. Transmission is in the law. it is mandatory to transmit. What is not mandatory is to transmit real time, because they know that it is not everywhere in our country that you can transmit real time. Network issues will get in the way. Connectivity issues will get in the way. The internet penetration that we have as a country is not total. Even in Osun State, there are still places where you cannot use your phone. On Journalist Hangout, I already listed some of the places in Osun State where you cannot use your phone, some wards where you cannot use your phone. So how do you do real-time transmission when there is no network? So no one can deny that in some parts of our country, there are connectivity issues. So when there is connectivity issue, what do you then do? How do you make a law saying real-time transmission is mandatory, a law that you cannot implement, a law that in some parts of our country you cannot implement? Who is interested in making a law that you cannot implement? I once spoke to Governor Fashola of Lagos. I said, why didn't you ban Okada in the whole of Lagos State? He said, I will not come up with a law that is impracticable to implement. So the real-time, mandatory real-time transmission of results is technically impractical across the length and breadth of our country. And if you cannot transmit across the length and breadth of our country, how do you then make it mandatory for electoral officers? So this is the issue. This is the issue, because it will lead to legal battles. If the law says you must transmit real time, then you have to transmit real time. But where you want to transmit real time and the infrastructure does not support that, what do you then do? What do you do? So this is the issue. And to solve that problem, they said you can do where you cannot transmit real time, then you go manual. Our people are behaving as if manual voting is such an anathema. And even in the biggest democracies in the world, manual elections are still taking place. I gave the example of the mail-in ballots that diaspora Americans use. The mail-in ballots, they come manual. It's not electronic. India is the biggest democracy in the world. India is the most populated country in the world as we speak. But India's election is a combination of manual as well as electronic voting.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's the way it is. I don't know any country that will say, okay, we have scrapped manual, but people still vote manually. The problem is that we do not trust our electoral umpires. We do not trust the system in our country. That is why we believe that, oh, if it is not electronic, if it is not real-time transmission, then it can never be transparent. So the issue is the question of trust. We must get to that point where people can trust the electoral process in our country. I know that INEC has not helped matters. Some INEC staff had been arrested in the past, rigging for political parties. Even ad hoc INEC staff, including professors, are known to have rigged election for political parties, to the point that Mike Igini got them arrested and prosecuted. But what is particularly, what has really angered the electoral stakeholders
Yeah.
is the fact that even while people are still debating the matter of electronic transmission of results, the president quickly signed the um, the bill into law. So they are not happy. They felt that the president should have waited a little bit, at least for those issues to be trashed out. So a coalition of civil society organizations like Center for Media and Society, Yaga Africa, the Kuka Center, the International Press Center, IPC, Electoral, Women Trust Fund, and TAF Africa expressed disappointment in the outcome of the Electoral Act. They believe that the new electoral law has failed to address some of the issues that have cropped up in the past. And they believe that even party members are not happy with some of what is contained in the Electoral Act, especially mode of party primaries, which resisted the options to only two. The options now are just two: direct primaries and consensus, whereas in the past we had three options. So they are of the view that direct primaries can be very, very expensive. Not many party members are happy with it. Not many party
Yeah.
members are happy with it. They prefer that they should have left the option of indirect primary uh, uh, in the law. Then there is also the 50 million non-refundable administrative fee for new political parties. They believe that this is too high and shouldn't have been included in the Electoral Act. So they are worried that confidence in elections in our country remain fragile and that there are some dangerous loopholes that needed to be addressed before the hasty um, signing of the bill into law. So is this, to them, political expediency has been prioritized over electoral transparency and electoral integrity. So,
That's right.
but they also admit there are some key portions of that Electoral Act that are very good. For example, the matter of downloadable voter cards. They believe that the downloadable voter cards will increase electoral participation because it will make it easier for people to register for elections. They are also happy that this new act allows for those who falsify results to get bigger punishment. For example, in the in the 2023, I mean 2023
General
the
election.
2022 Electoral Act as amended for the 2023 election. There is, for those who do false collation of results, there is 5 million fine or 3 years imprisonment or both. But in this case, false collation sanctions is now 10 years imprisonment without an option of fine. So you can see that the new law is a big disincentive for those who would want to falsify election results, especially INEC staff who want to falsify election results on behalf of um, uh, politicians. So, of course, too, INEC is now to issue notice of 300 days to election, which will reduce prolonged pre-election overeating. Apart from that, BVAS has now been codified in the statute, removing discretion and mandating electronic accreditation as a safeguard. So it's now codified, it's in the law. Electronic accreditation of voters through BVAS.
Yeah.
There is no option to BVAS, you have to use BVAS. So this has now been put in the law. And then, of course, candidate submission has now been reduced to 120 days. That submission of candidates by parties has now been reduced to 120 days instead of the 180 days that was in the last law. So this shortens litigation cycle and reduces intra-party dispute timeline. So as I said earlier, this law recognizes electronic transmission. It mandates transmission, but clarifies that Form EC8A is the primary evidence when connectivity fails. Did you hear me?
Absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
mandates transmission, but it has now affirmed that the record, the result, has imputed in Form EC8A is the primary evidence when connectivity fails. This, in the opinion of election stakeholders, protects remote polling units. So polling units in remote areas where connectivity could really be an issue, the results from there will be protected because Form EC8A is the primary evidence.
Absolutely.
So then, of course, overvoting. The new law affirms that where voting exceeds accreditation, the result stands cancelled. The result stands cancelled. So there are some positive things, there are positive portions in that law. So it's not entirely bad, and we cannot simply dismiss it as a bad electoral law or as a bad body of electoral laws, because the real-time transmission of results was not made mandatory. There is a reason it was not made mandatory, and it is because they realized that in some parts of the country, you cannot transmit results real time. Where
Absolutely.
Connectivity, where you have connectivity issues, it is futile to attempt or think that you can transmit. In most parts of our country, the 2G network really works, but it can hardly support multimedia transmission because it is not strong enough. So hopefully in some years to come, we will have achieved tremendous internet coverage of our country, such that this kind of controversy won't come up again. But people must realize that in many parts of our country, you cannot do real-time transmission. Voters in Borno North, because the bulk of that area is unsafe, they usually move them to Manguno to go and vote. There are many parts of that state where you cannot use your phone. I've been there a number of times, so I know what I'm talking about. Once you are out of the state capital by like 20 kilometers, your phone lines will be inaccessible. We usually are able to use our phones once we come back to the hotel in the state capital. This is the truth.
Absolutely.
Anybody who goes to that area knows that I'm saying the truth. And that was why I called out Senator Ningi, Abdul Ningi from Bauchi State, who claimed that POS works in every part of Nigeria. I called him out. I listed the places where POS does not work. I'm a frequent traveler in our country, and I listed places where POS does not work, and I dared him to challenge what I've said. Senator Ningi has not said anything about what I said for the past 2 weeks because he knows in his heart that what I said cannot be controverted because I mentioned communities. So it's up to him to find out. So this is the thing. Imagine when those children were taken away from the government school in Kuriga, Kaduna State. There was no way the abduction could be communicated to the security agencies. And the closest military base was more than 40 kilometers away. The current Minister of Defense told me that it was the day after the abduction that the armed forces got to know. That's what happens. Where a community is located far away and they have no means of communication. When you go to Kuriga, you cannot use your phone. Yet it's a community of densely populated village. So this is the reality.
That's right. Time is actually fast spent. Let me quickly take some comments before we call it a wrap. We've actually touched on so many issues and some of the questions I would like to ask, But then Ibrahim Musa says, let's be honest, not every village has reliable internet. Making electronic transmission optional might actually prevent chaos on election day. Adaize Obi says transparency should be the priority in elections. Removing mandatory electronic transmission raises security questions. Daniel Eze, politicians always promise electoral reforms until they get into power. And Bashir Sadiq says technology can fail too. If the network collapses during elections, what happens? Maybe flexibility is not such a bad idea. Ngozi Okafor says Nigerians fought for electoral transparency for years. This amendment feels like a step backwards. And lastly, Kunle Ajayi says, instead of arguing about transmission, the real issue is whether our institutions can protect the integrity of results, which is very, very germane. BKO, because of our time, I think it's safe for us to call it a wrap here. That's our show for today's edition of Issues with Jide. Special thanks to you, Babajide Kolade Otutoju, for those insightful analyses as always. And we've got a lot of people who actually clocked in today watching us live.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you to our viewers. We're in the business of educating our people. Continue to do that. The time will come when we will draw up a long list of places where people cannot use their phones so that they will know we are not joking when we say that people can't use their phones in many parts of our country. This is the truth. Some of us have made up our minds never to lie to people who are listening to us. We will never lie for the sake of political correctness. So this is the thing. And when we mention communities, it is because we want people to cross-check whether we said the truth or not. And our people in our country deserve to vote. In all the nooks and crannies of our country, people deserve to vote, whether there are connectivity issues or there are not. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as classical word entertainment says, the only time I enjoy objective, factual, and investigative journalism is only when I listen to Ogaba Bajide. God bless your steadfastness. Thank you so much, and thanks to our audience, for keeping our company on every edition. You can see the program again anytime by subscribing to our YouTube channel, TVC News Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button to get the latest information. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at TVC News NG. I'm also at Ibrahim_Shita. On behalf of the rest of the team, I'm Ibrahim Shita. See you again next edition.